So season one was primarily centered around the healthcare revolution and the intersection with corporate culture, bringing and creating happiness at work. And I put it on hiatus and I'm relaunching in June of this year and very excited to do so with a slightly more organic feel. I want to lean into the name of the podcast and that corporate counterculture. So what are the conversations that we can all be having that are maybe counterintuitive to traditional conversations that were held in the corporate workplace, but are very relevant to what unites us, which is humanity. We're all humans. We all feel and experience the same emotions with different stories. So looking to tell really organic stories, as well as talk about some of the topics that maybe were considered quote unquote taboo out of professionalism. But at the end of the day, I think that the world, and really I see that with the LinkedIn community, is kind of calling for people are people, and this whole professionalism title is often a mask that just strips us of our humanity. So talking about like what's going on in personal lives, what real challenges have you faced, what frustrates you in the workplace, but more so than just talking about the frustration, what solutions do you have? Bringing together organic conversations around how we create culture in corporate America that values and rewards our lives as well-rounded humans we have a huge life outside of the workplace. So just kind of giving an opportunity for everybody to share how they've navigated that space, because it's really unifying. The more I talk to people about this, they've all had some struggle with the professionalism or work-life balance or expectations of work life. So just kind of talking about organically solutions. How do we fix the problems at large? And how do we have the conversations that maybe corporate culture didn't historically favor, but is crying out for and needs to hear?
Welcome to the RockstarsRocking podcast, powered by Voluntary Disruption, a show dedicated to people who are crushing their business and life goals. These are bite-sized conversations with leading rock stars in their respective industry who are pumped to share their story to help drive you to the next level. So, are you ready to rock? Speaking of rock stars, here's your host, Eric Silverman.
Hey, rock stars, welcome back to another episode of RockstarsRocking, where I only have the best, the top rock stars crushing their business, their life, their daily goals. They're growing in many, many, many ways. And today, this week is absolutely no different. I am so excited and pumped to have on our guest this week, Nikki Fielding from the greater Tampa Bay, Florida area. She's actually a roaming nomad right now, and maybe she can explain that if she wants, but I'm super excited because she's got a place coming together really, really soon. What's up, Nikki?
Hey, Eric, thank you so much for having me today. It's such a pleasure to be on.
Hey, it is my pleasure. I'm so grateful that you are able to join us today. And I'm excited to get in to what you are all about, both in your personal life and experiences and things you've gone through in your past and currently go through, and also business. I want to talk about what you're doing now to grow your world, so you can feed yourself and give off the positive vibe and energy that I always see right here on social media. So for those that don't know Nikki, first off, change that immediately. What on earth are you thinking? Connect with Nikki on LinkedIn. She's very active and very vocal. She posts daily content, and you'll immediately get a sense of who she is. She is the chief fairy at the Conscious Culture Fairy, which is the name of her company. Nikki, let me ask you a question. Let me get right into it if you don't mind. And I want to start with kind of the branding aspect, because you have a really cool brand that you've made for yourself. And I feel like you've kind of just busted onto the scene really in the last, I would even say less than a year. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm crazy, but don't be offended. I just don't remember seeing you until maybe mid or late last year. Am I going crazy? Like, what am I missing here?
No, you're spot on. I announced my brand on September 22nd, the anniversary of my father's death.
That's my birthday. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Well, sorry about the anniversary of your dad's death, but my gosh, I love that day.
Happy birthday to me. That's okay. It should be a day that's celebrated. And so I wanted to replace that with a really meaningful moment in my life in my life, and as an homage to my father, who is a successful entrepreneur. So it was kind of strategically chosen, and makes me even happier that it's your birthday as well. So that said, I announced my brand and became very active on LinkedIn as of end of September, but I had spent months really leaning into strategy and relying on my background in business operations, strategy, and strategic growth to come out hot, as you say, like kind of bursting onto the brand. So I really took the time to define, what am I about? What is the branding message? Who am I trying to reach? How do I add value to them? And really getting granular with that plan, knowing that it will change in your first year as an entrepreneur. Everything is fluid, but really trying to have that messaging concrete rather than start the presence on LinkedIn, see what works and see what doesn't, and go from there. I had a pretty clear plan about how I wanted to reach out to my audience and make an impact.
So I would definitely say you've made an impact, and you're starting to, you're continuing to grow your brand and grow that impact, because you're everywhere. You post daily content, whether it be pictures or just posts or video, whatever it might be. So much so that your peers in an industry that, quite frankly, you're not even, we're going to talk about this, but you're not even really in, per se, the industry yet. You're bursting into it, and you support and complement our industry. When I say our, for those listening, I'm certainly talking about the employee benefits and the insurance world. But you were up for an award at a new industry event that's going to be continuing, the U-Powered Symposium, put on by our good friends David Contorno and Emma Fox Contorno. And this event was in February of 2022. And I was up for an award myself, and I'm very appreciative, but I got my ass kicked by Nancy Giacalone. But you, my friend, you, Nikki, you had some really stiff competition, and you crushed them. You won the Notable Newcomer of the Year award with respect to social media and branding. And I was so proud to see that, because you earned it. You deserve it. So that, to me, is proof that you've exploded onto the scene. Can you talk about that for just a second?
Yeah, I want to start with just expressing my gratitude to David Contorno and Emma Fox for nominating me in that category. That was a true blessing so early in my trajectory, and just really want to share my appreciation for them. And secondly, just express my humble honor to be nominated in the company that I was. That category, I had no expectations of winning whatsoever, but I did decide to set myself up for the chance to do so. So I was very active, speaking out that I had this opportunity to be nominated, and I leaned into my strengths, which are relationship building, networking, and branding on social media. So in addition to LinkedIn and just making sure that I was sharing consistent messages that would give people a reason to engage with my content and really understand who I'm about and share my authentic truth, I was transferring that onto other social media platforms and getting them excited about the healthcare revolution. I was overwhelmed with tremendous support from Instagram and Facebook, and people I might not have really spoken to in 15 years who weren't aware of the healthcare revolution. And I used it as an opportunity to educate on those other platforms what the people in this benefits and insurance space are doing, and the type of solutions that exist, and the way that they come together to fix the problems and really work collaboratively, even though technically they're direct competitors. And that kind of got a lot of what I call the grassroots support, where I had people who were saying they were voting daily, who are so removed from this industry and space, don't even know it exists, but love the message. And I served as that connector and that link to kind of get people excited and get people behind the movement of it, rather than just myself. I'm just one person. So, and again, kind of to speak on the branding piece of it, I just really looked at, how do you show up in the world and how do you capture that? And the pink, white, and gold, I mean, you see the hair, that's my logo as well, really tying in that consistency so that my voice would resonate, but even more so than resonate, have a certain presence. When people saw certain colors or think of fairies, they're going to think of the Conscious Culture Fairy. And so all that to say, I am truly humbled and honored to have won that award. And it was a really special moment, and one of my biggest opportunities to celebrate in my first year in business.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It was super cool seeing you there and meeting you in person finally. And, quick shameless plug for our friends, Emma and David. For those listening, their next event is in Miami in February of 23. I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but you powered symposium year one. The inaugural year was absolutely incredible, and I'm super fired up for year two. And I assume I'll see you there. Yes, Nikki?
Yes, you will.
It's coming to your home state, so I don't know if that's driving distance. I'm not bad with geography, but you certainly don't have to travel as far as you did to go to Phoenix.
It is, but I don't really like long drives, so I'll probably fly.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So let's talk about this for a second. So I'm a bit confused, and I think a lot of people, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think many people that see your content may also be just a bit confused. So let's clarify some things for them. You're not, I believe you actually are insurance licensed technically, but you don't sell insurance. You're not an employee benefit advisor or counselor per se. Talk to me about what you're doing and how it complements what advisors and brokers and consultants in the medical healthcare space are doing for their employer groups and the end user, which is the ultimate person in need, and that's the employee. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, and I'd like to start with, correct, I'm not in insurance and benefits, but when I say servant leadership is important to me and leading with empathy and leading from the front, those are not empty or hollow words. So while I got licensed, I also went door to door as a producer and did cold calls as a producer. And it wasn't my sole responsibility. It was for a learning process. And I typically sent those people to somebody else if they expressed interest. I didn't have all the learnings to do so, but I wanted to experience, what does that role look like for the average person coming in who doesn't have a background in this? And I do have a background in business to business sales and sales management, so I'm comfortable with that aspect of it. But what questions come up? What are people's issues in this space? I've also handled enrollments with that licensing. I wanted to see what are the big issues with HR, and more so the actual employee. What are their challenges making these decisions? So I've kind of moved, and then also serving in a more strategic consulting role on the back end operations for a benefits company. So I wanted to have a well-rounded, holistic view of the industry. What I like to say is like a working knowledge, enough to be dangerous. Like, I don't know benefits and insurance. I can be very transparent about that. But knowledge is power. And when you get your hands dirty and lead from the front, solutions are endless when you go in there, not looking to necessarily master a role, but looking to observe that role. And so I started seeing a lot of opportunities, namely being one, there is a lack of accountability on a human level, what I like to call radical responsibility for our own health and well-being. So that's part of where I come in with my messaging, and I will circle around to that. But the three things are really that: how do we encourage people to take radical responsibility for their own health? Two, how do we help inspire them that healing is possible? Because most people would take responsibility and be willing to do the things that are needed in terms of lifestyle habits, behavioral changes, if they really saw that there was an end goal and they had examples in front of them of other people who have overcome equally challenging or even more challenging health concerns and truly healed them. And so finally, that brings me into my role as an energy healer. I have been studying energy, the body, the energy systems, meridians, chakras for decades, and I perform various modalities of energy healing, including Reiki, angelic healing. I have some shamanic gifts. So there's a lot that goes into that. However, what I like to tell people is that gift creates space for you to fill it with whatever you need. And if you already have done work on your mindset, most of us know eating a healthy diet and eating more plant-based will probably result in better health. But we may tell ourselves we can't, or we treat food as a reward, or food has such an emotional connotation for us. It's what we do, like, okay, I'm going to reward myself. I had a hard day. I deserve to eat this. And yes, you do deserve to treat yourself if you have a hard day, but shifting that energy of food is always served in that way. Once that is removed from you, then you can say, okay, I know this will make me feel better. And I actually can take the step to embody that belief, ground it into this reality, and take action on it. And so I look at my role as talking about an alternative form of health that crosses into the healthcare revolution, because ultimately companies are looking to increase the health of their population, and healthcare is one of the single biggest expenses of any company. So we're all, as business owners, looking at the bottom line, and profitability is important. So if you can drastically improve the health and well-being of your population, that solves the key problems business owners have. One, you'll be more profitable. Your healthcare costs will go down. Two, you will attract and retain better quality talent, because when you improve somebody's life for the better, they repay it with gratitude. And I always like to say, happy, healthy people do the best work. It's usually things outside of the workplace that prevent us from showing up as our best selves. So I really look at myself with my marketing background and branding and just, I can be pretty high energy. I serve as kind of a voice of the people to bring awareness to this movement, to help people understand what it's about, the importance of it, and that they have a and when I say they, I mean every single person, whether you are a business leader, an employee, whatever person, you have a very important and real role in improving your own health. And that's contagious. We watch others heal and it inspires. You look at content you like, it's often who's doing intermittent fasting or somebody who's got a really in-depth workout routine, and that inspires us to take action. So I kind of look at my role as serving as that connector and being able to be the bridge of speaking to the average person. Yeah, I don't know about insurance or benefits either. I like just a little bit and kind of talk to them in a way that might resonate outside of when we get my background's technology. So I'm not knocking the benefits and insurance industry, but all the acronyms and all the terms that we start to speak in as we become experts in a space, it's like speaking a different language. People don't understand what we're saying. And I did the same in technology. I would rattle off acronyms. People like, but what? And so I had to learn to consciously be aware of, okay, you're an expert in this space, but you're talking to people who are not. And so that's what I'm really trying to solve, is help bring more widestream awareness, because the more support from ultimately the person that we're serving, which is the employee in this population, the person who has access to the insurance, the more they're aware of these alternative methods and how much more that they can get through their company and asking for those things, then we all win, from the business owner, the people in the benefits and insurance space, the healthcare revolution. And just as a society, we're happier and happier, healthy people are a lot kinder and more pleasant to be around.
So I agree. And I love learning about all that you're doing and how you're helping in this space. When it comes to all that you're doing, my question, I'm kind of curious about, were you big into all of the healing and the energy and so forth prior to, and I want you to talk about it if you're able and willing, but I know you went through a very life-altering injury many years ago that probably, I got to imagine, changed the course of your life in multiple ways, some for the better, some maybe for the worse. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but were you always into this type of healing and energy, or did the injury you went through push you into this and make you interested? You tell me, maybe expand upon what you went through and where it's put you.
Yeah, I mean, my injury, and I'll tell that story in detail, was a strong catalyst for this passion and understanding it as part of my purpose. I would say I was always pretty in tune with energy. I grew up, like many girls, being absolutely horse crazy and talking about wanting a pony from probably the time I could speak. And my parents kind of embraced it. My mom had horses growing up, but they were like, you don't just get a pony. No, you got to go save money. So they tasked me at 6 years old with saving $1,000. The cost of the pony doesn't matter, but you have to work for what you want in this life. And they taught me the power of money. They opened a bank account. Like, if you earn money, we'll match it dollar for dollar, but we're not matching your birthday money, Christmas money. That was gifted to you. You have to earn it. And so I started my first business at 6 years old and went door to door promoting it in the neighborhood. And by 9, I had saved up $1,000 and got that pony. And I would say that horses were the first real catalyst of energy. They are, they're flighty animals, and we rescued racehorses off the track who hadn't always been treated well. And I learned that regardless of what I said, they were responding to my body movements, how I approached them, what kind of energy I was directing at them. If I'd had a bad day and was anxious, I couldn't be around some of the racehorses. They weren't going to have it. They had too much anxiety of their own. And so I learned to regulate my energy and how powerful that was with animals. And eventually it clicked, not right away, but eventually I was like, oh, energy's energy. That's people too. But I hadn't really studied it until my accident. So at 19, I was in college, and it was a weekend between finals and just needed to blow off some steam, but not in the traditional partying sense. So we went to a rock quarry, and there was a rope swing, and I stood up there, and this taught me a lot about health, resilience, and the power of intuition. I stood on top of the cliff, and there was a cliff that stuck out below. the one you jumped, and you could swing over it and drop into the water. And I stood up there and pointed and said, I don't see how you don't land right there, and pointed to the ground. And again, I was 19 and everybody's like, we'll show you. So I watched everybody else go. And before I went, I was holding the rope, and most people I had recently met, or some just met that day, but I had one of my best friends with me, and she walked up to me and said, what do you see? And I was staring out at the edge of the cliff, and I looked at her, and I never really understood truly how valid and how our intuition speaks to us. But I looked at her and kind of surprised, said, well, there's a row of white light and it looks like angels, and they all have their hands out saying, don't go. And she just kind of looked at me and her mouth dropped, and she was like, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. And unfortunately, despite such a clear message and a powerful moment in my life of protection, I just wasn't raised in a culture that really like supported, this is real, this is how your intuition speaks to you. And so I went, and sure enough, I landed exactly where I'd pointed to. And by the grace of God, I saw it coming. As soon as I jumped, I just, yep, I'm going to land there. And I got into a tiny ball and held my knees and landed on my heels. And it was about a 30 to 40 foot diagonal drop, like running and jumping. So I shattered all the bones in the back of my feet into like a million pieces. There was no putting them back together. And was in tremendous shock, and went off, ended up in the water, and was quite deep down. I mean, it was a high cliff that we went off of, and was trying to swim to the surface, but I couldn't feel my legs from the knee down. So I knew, having been hurt on horses several times, if you don't feel an injury, it's worse than if you do. You're in shock. So I knew I was severely hurt, and I had heard and sort of felt the impact, but immediately just went into shock. And I was really having trouble making it to the surface. I couldn't use my feet, and it was the beginning of May, so it was very, very cold water, 100 feet deep. And in Georgia, Northeast Georgia, it was probably 60-degree water. And I wasn't sure I was going to make it to the surface. I was recounting, well, I did swim team for 12 years. I know I can hold my breath forever. I'll make it up there, and just kind of swimming, like scooping water with one hand. I wasn't even actively doing this. I just didn't have it in me in that level of shock. And just something, Erica, force beyond myself, like pushed me to that surface. I looked up, I was like, I'm not going to make it. I can see the light, I can see up there. And somehow I broke through and called out for help, and my friends jumped in. But that began a very real journey of months off and on in the hospital. Initially, 65 total surgeries and procedures, a year in a wheelchair, and several other near-death experiences related loosely, indirectly to the original accident and or reactions to medication, anesthesia. So it was kind of byproduct of, I wanted to save myself, and I knew other people that had used energy healing and worked, and I was studying it and using it in my own life and sharing it with some friends. It was never really my intention to specialize in this, get totally certified and do it as a business. It was, okay, I'm getting access to the best doctors, but it's not enough. I want more. I was told I'd never walk again. And I said, then you're fired. That's what I told the doctor. And another one told me I'd never walk again. I said, then you're fired. I need a doctor who believes that if I believe it, I can do so, because I'm not willing to live a life like movement is everything to me. I'm such an active person. I'm not willing to leave that life. And so I was lucky to find doctors who were both very talented at what they do and geniuses, and appreciated that mindset of, you do your best work and I'll do the rest with my mindset, my belief, and the actions I take in life.
Wow. Wow. So that was 15, 20 years ago when this happened?
It was May of 2000. So 22 years ago, I was 19 years old.
So talk to me, I mean, from a mental health capacity, mental health in the year 2022 is bigger than it ever has been. A lot of it more due to the pandemic and so forth. But you were, I got to imagine, dealing with some crazy mental health struggles and challenges over the course of those years, early on and midway through. Is it the stuff that you talk about now and the energy and so forth? Is that what got you through, or did you have some down days? Did you see, I don't know how much you want to share, but my wife is a mental health worker. She's a psychotherapist. She sees kids and teenagers and young adults that she's been seeing for years. I don't know how she does it, because she hears problems all day long and is still able to do what she does as a family. But that's a big deal. Like, did you ever see anybody? Did you have to, or was it the energy that stopped you from it? You tell me.
No, absolutely. I mean, energy is a complement. I feel like it's a trifecta: mind, body, spirit. We have our traditional Western healthcare that's more body and physical related healing. Therapy is more mental, understanding your thought processes. It gets into the emotions, but it's more understanding your habits, your thoughts, how to replace them, and having a toolkit to shift that thinking so that you can have more positive thoughts that serve you better. And the energy healing is really resolving the emotional root of it and tying in the whole spiritual component. So, all that's to say, I had tremendous struggles with mental health, and I've been very vulnerable and open about this. It came from childhood. I had pretty severe trauma as a child and started having very real mental health struggles as middle school and high school, and was in therapy from the time I was hospitalized for suicide attempts at 14, had I'm quite petite. You've met me. I'm maybe, just to share like candidly, like maybe 105 to 110 pounds, but I was 82 pounds at that same height. Like I was near dead from my eating disorder. And so I've had a long, and truly, I just didn't really understand it. I had a beautiful family and grew up on a horse farm. It was idyllic in so many ways. I had repressed the memory of the severe childhood trauma. So getting to that and being able to solve the root of it, but I had always relied on therapy. And after the accident, that became really challenging because going to college and having some freedom had really opened up somebody who'd always struggled with anxiety and depression and OCD tendencies. I was so happy to be free. And this was at the end of my first semester of freshman year. And instead of enjoying that freedom and having what many people refer to as the best time of your life from a social aspect, I was back home living with my parents in a wheelchair in a house that wasn't handicap accessible. We put a ramp on, but they didn't want to totally revamp our whole house or buy a new home for being in a wheelchair for a year or under. So I was kind of confined to certain rooms. And beyond that confinement, I wasn't allowed to put my feet below hip level for the first 3 months at all. Like in a wheelchair, I couldn't put my feet down. Like the legs were out straight and then pillows propped. And if I was in a car, I had to prop my legs up, like at risk of amputation. They did almost amputate the left foot. So I kind of lost like my social network, my friends, my freedom, everything, and realized that I was really going to have to go inwards and find a higher power, in addition to absolutely remaining in therapy, which I'm a huge advocate of. And I have been in it off and on since 14 years old, and always go back to it. If I find myself thinking thoughts, I look at it like, how do you start it before the problem comes? So if I find myself, we're all going to have a down day, and shift it and give yourself grace. But if I'm having any consistent with thinking not healthy thoughts or just not feeling the way that I want to feel, I get back into it. And again, energy healing for me was simply a complement that allowed me to finally truly heal and release these things, because I already understood the power of taking care of my body. I almost lost use of it. So that's been of utmost importance to me since a very young age. And I understood mentally all the different toolkits to shift anxiety and depression, but I still felt that way. And I just would get frustrated with myself. Like, all this stuff, and you should feel better and do better. And it was the energy healing that allowed me to fully like release some of those patterns. Nothing is a magic pill, but the combination again of all three was something that really helped me move past anxiety and depression and a lot of the issues that I've experienced, to truly just let them go and kind of laugh at them now. And not that I'm laughing at it, but just laugh in the sense of so grateful that I'm a huge believer that divine healing belongs to all of us. Like, we can heal anything if we are consistent and take the appropriate actions to do so and seek out the modalities that speak to us, because different strokes for different folks.
So, and I don't want to put them on the same playing field or the same plane, but, somebody who, I think about like, a woman or a man who maybe they've had a long career, 20, 30 years with a company, they get laid off, they get terminated, they still have young kids, they have a kid in college, they have a mortgage, they have car payments. So from a perspective of injury, that isn't there, right? But from a mental health perspective of injury, maybe it is there for them. So I feel like what you went through and the story that you share, somebody in that still trauma, somebody going through that trauma in their life, they can appreciate. And I guess the question that comes to mind is, if somebody who's listening to you today if they're going through something big and deep and personal, what do you do on the days that you're really like, you want to just call it quits? You want to just give up and say this isn't going to work and I can't do it. And in your case, you didn't succumb to that. You told the doctors, screw you. Might not have used those words, but my words. You said, get out of here. I'm going to find a doctor that believes in me and that can figure this out so I can walk again. What would you say to somebody who's going through something, whether it be personal injury or more mental health and personal problems?
Yeah, I think one, we're having a mental health crisis. So almost everybody is struggling to varying degrees. And secondly, part of my training in energy healing and really digging into that world was about emotions and the vibrational frequency that they carry. And so we kind of intuitively know, like, yeah, well, anger doesn't feel nearly as good as gratitude, but really understanding like the specific frequency of each emotion and how that plays out.
Sure.
So what I would share with people is there is a finite number of emotions, and nobody should ever feel there's no comparing trauma. We're a collectively traumatized society, both by our upbringing and just the powers that be here and the way society works, as well as everybody has very real struggles in their life. And these past few years have really presented more than ever before. So there is no need to compare. Your emotions are the exact same as somebody else who might be experiencing something quote unquote worse, but the emotions are the same. The vibration and frequency of them, how they feel in your body, and what those feelings can produce mentally are all the same. We're all one in that aspect. So I look at it as I've really leaned into the power of grace for myself. I think that our culture encourages busyness and productivity above all, and those aren't always the things that make us feel better. They're important. If you have big goals and you want to be successful, you have to work hard. But if you're not taking care of yourself, there's nothing to work for. If you don't want to be here, why give yourself endless tasks? So if I'm having a really hard day and struggling for any reason, I typically create space. I mean, I'll give you an example tomorrow, and I'm not having a hard time. I'm blessed to be super busy, and I did work over the weekend, and I have several healings at night and a workshop Friday night. It's just been a lot of work. And I was like, I can't sustain that and move this weekend, which is again, not really having a weekend. I can't sustain that on an ongoing basis. So I looked at my calendar and said, well, I don't really have anything until 3 tomorrow. And I'm going to the beach. I'm going to sleep in. I'm here in Florida. I'm going to the beach, and I don't want to be there in full sun. So I'll be done by noon or 1 and then can pick it up. And there's zero guilt. I will have my phone on do not disturb. I will not be checking email. I won't, maybe I'll post on social media just because I like it. But I'm not going to be active on it. It really is, I have to create that space for myself, and I do those things. Self-care is everything. And oftentimes we reward ourselves. We push ourselves so hard that then we reward ourselves with masking of symptoms. Like, I don't want to feel this way, and I'm empty. I've been going so hard. And so we turn to things that may not serve us. Maybe we drink too much or mask it with prescription medication. There is a time and place for all that. Like, have a mimosa, please, by all means. And if you need medication for any sort of condition, stay on that. But I had to really look at, again, my own history. Like, the medication never made me feel better. It made me feel nothing until the point where I was ready to feel and to move through that. And so I've tried to get away from some of those crutches and replace them with healthier habits, like taking time and space to go do a yoga class, or getting in nature is one of my favorite things. And just, it starts with the mindset of, we're all responsible for so much: work, families, relationships, friends, the world at large, helping our community. If you aren't filling your own cup, you don't have anything to serve from. So I had to look at restructuring my whole life around making self-care my top priority so that I can show up and do all of the other things that I want to do to serve and make an impact with zero apologies. Some people love it and embrace this mindset. And some people are like, you are so lazy. You're like posting pictures at the beach and you're doing a sound bath and it's the middle of the day. And I'm like, well, whatever, you don't know what's going on in my life. And you're always so grateful for how for my presence and energy online, but this is how I fuel myself to bring that energy into the world every day. And everybody deserves, even if it's just as simple as, we don't all live on the beach. And I can admit that, like, it's a privilege and an honor to be here. And everybody has access to take a few deep breaths or go for a walk somewhere and just create space where you say, it's okay to just be, and it's okay to feel bad. Crying is a wonderful release. Bathing, water is a really powerful healer. So take a bath. Like, these are tools that everybody has access to, regardless of geography and circumstance, are just the ability to say, what will make me feel better? And even if I can only do this for 2 hours, I'm going to choose to do that because I deserve it. I deserve to feel better. And when I feel better, I take better care of my family, my team at work, the people around me, and everybody wins.
Yeah, no, that's true. And going back to what you said, you got to take care of yourself first. I mean, it's exactly why when you're on an airplane, they always say, if we have a problem, make sure you put your mask on first before you help others, even children. You can't help others without helping yourself. So well said, well said. As we wrap up in our last few minutes, I wanted to talk about your podcast. I know you did a podcast. The name is Corporate Counterculture, Corporate Counterculture. And you did season 1. And I believe you're going to be bringing back your podcast and launching season 2 in the near future. Can you talk a little bit about what the podcast is about and the direction you want to be taking it in the future?
Yeah, so season 1 was primarily centered around the healthcare revolution and the intersection with corporate culture, bringing and creating happiness at work. And I put it on hiatus, and I'm relaunching in June of this year, and very excited to do so with a slightly more organic feel. I want to lean into the name of the podcast and that corporate counterculture. So what are the conversations that we can all be having that are maybe counterintuitive to traditional conversations that were held in the corporate workplace, but are very relevant to what unites us, which is humanity? We're all humans. We all feel and experience the same emotions with different stories. So looking to tell really organic stories, as well as talk about some of the topics that maybe were considered quote unquote taboo out of professionalism. But at the end of the day, I think that the world, and really I see that with the LinkedIn community, is kind of calling for people are people, and this whole professionalism title is often a mask that just strips us of our humanity. So talking about like what's going on in personal lives, what real challenges have you faced, what frustrates you in the workplace, but more so than just talking about the frustration, what solutions do you have? Bringing together organic conversations around how we create culture in corporate America that values and rewards our lives as well-rounded humans we have a huge life outside of the workplace. So just kind of giving an opportunity for everybody to share how they've navigated that space, because it's really unifying. The more I talk to people about this, they've all had some struggle with the professionalism or work-life balance or expectations of work life. So just kind of talking about organically solutions. How do we fix the problems at large, and how do we have the conversations that maybe corporate culture didn't historically favor, but is crying out for and needs to hear?
Sure. Well, I'm excited. I'm going to subscribe and tune in.
Thank you.
And I hope everybody listening does as well. Nikki, you've said it all. I'm excited that my audience has had a chance to dig deep and get to know you better if they already do, and or meet you for the first time. Nikki, how can people reach you? I know you're super social. LinkedIn is probably a good way. Do you mind if people reach out or try to connect and follow you on LinkedIn? And is there an email, your website you want to tell everybody?
Yeah, it would be my pleasure to connect on LinkedIn, and I am very active at responding and looking through my messages. So would love to connect there. I also have a website, www.consciouscultureferry.com, and it includes a link to book time with me, as well as when things come through LinkedIn, I typically send like an intake form so that we have a better idea of ways you may want to work together and have a little bit more strategy for a call. But I love making connections. My general philosophy on LinkedIn is I will connect with anybody who wants to do so. There is true value in every connection because every human is valuable. So
Sure.
Eric, thank you. And my email finally is Nikki@consciouscultureferry.com. It's Nikki. But thank you so much for having me. This was truly a pleasure to be on your show today.
Oh, no, pleasure's all mine. I appreciate you coming on. So again, it's consciouscultureferry.com, and her email is Nikki, Nikki @consciouscultureferry.com. And as she said, and I can attest, she's very vocal and active on LinkedIn. If you're not already following her, do so, or even better, connect with her. But do her a favor, do me a favor, no spam messages. come on, people. We're not looking to sell here. Connect, build a relationship, and see where it takes us. So thank you, Nikki, for coming on. And look, I just show up and hit record and ask some fun questions and get to know some fun people. But I have a whole team of people behind me that do it. It takes an army. So for everybody behind the scenes at the Rockstars Rocking podcast, I'm Eric Silverman. That, everybody, is my good friend, Rockstar Nikki Fielding out of the greater Tampa area. And good luck on this week's move, or this weekend's move, Nikki. And for anybody tuning in, if you have a question or comment or thought, drop them in the comment section below and reach out to myself and or Nikki directly if you'd like. Thanks again, Nikki. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Rockstars Rocking podcast. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. 5 stars would totally rock. Until next time, Rockstars, keep rocking.